Hi guys, this video is going to be about how to connect your controller directly to your computer. Many times people are looking for the fastest and easiest way to get some lights and go blinky flashy, and they think that connecting their controller directly to the computer is the easiest and fastest way. Especially new people into the hobby. They got a shiny new toy and they want to see it work. But in reality, this is typically not the easiest and quickest way because people don't understand networking and the processes. If you want more information on networking, I've got a link to a video below that discusses networking that might help you out. The quickest and easiest method usually is to connect your controller to your home network. But in case this is what you really need to do, this is going to be the process. So here you've got a computer and the controller, and you want to have a wire connecting the two of them together, and that's all it is. So in this video, I'm going to go over DHCP. And the reason I'm going to go over that is because it's good to understand what is going on and why you need to go through all of these steps. Then I'll show you how to connect it directly with a wire like we showed. But I'm also going to go over Wi-Fi tethering because that's another method of direct connection that might be beneficial for you. And it's a commonly used thing, especially people that are doing mobile displays like parade floats and things like that. So let's get into it. What is DHCP? DHCP is Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. You don't need to know what it is or all the intricate details on it, but I'm going to explain kind of how it to work. So in order for DHCP to work, there has to be a device in the network that has a DHCP server installed on it. Routers have this installed, and most computers and other network clients do not have a DHCP server installed, and that's by design because having more than one device that has a DHCP server on it could be catastrophic and you won't have any network communication at all. So in a typical network using DHCP, the router is going to manage all the IP addresses and will keep track of who they are and where they are. So how does this work? So you've got a computer joins the network and he shouts out to everybody. He doesn't know who's there, so he just shouts out to everybody and says, "Hello, I'm here. What's my address?" And the router, because it has a DHCP server on it, says, "Hey, I recognize you, and your IP address is going to be 192.168.1.123 or whatever address is the appropriate." But because we are connecting FPP directly to your computer, there is no DHCP server in this network. So what do you have to do? You have to do what's called static addressing. And what that is that you are going to assign the IP addresses to all the devices. You're going to manage those IP addresses to make sure that you don't have any IP conflicts and they're all in the same network. So this is how it would work if you connect your controller to your computer without manually configuring static IP addresses. So the controller is going to join the network. He's going to shout out to everybody. It says, "Hello, I'm here. What's my address?" And your computer is the only device on the network, and he doesn't have a DHCP server on him. So he goes, I don't know how to do that. I was going to ask you the same thing. And the computer, when it joins the network, it would essentially do the same thing. Shout out, "Hey, I'm here. What's my address?" So that's why it doesn't work if you keep using it with the default of the DHCP. So let's configure the computer. Depending on your computer, whether it's Mac or Windows and the operating system, the process will be slightly different. I'll show you a method to do it. I'm on a Windows 11 computer, but your individual computer might be slightly different than this, but it should be similar. So you're going to configure the Ethernet adapter to be on a different subnet than your home network. So my home network that I'm on right now is on a 192.168.1.xxx, meaning that the last three numbers could be anything in the network. And so for this, we're going to hook up to a 192.168.2 network for my direct connection. So let's get into it and see how we actually do this. Okay, so you'll go down here to your networking, right click and go Network and Internet Settings. And it came up on the other screen. So we'll go down to the Ethernet setting. It says no internet. It is connected right now to a controller, but it's not communicating because there's nothing there. So we're going to go down to the Ethernet settings here. And we have IP assignment. It's automatic DHCP, which is, like I said, the default. So we're going to edit that. We're going to save this from automatic to manual. We're going to turn on IPv4 because that's what it is. And we're going to change the address to 192.168.2.2. It's usually best to avoid the numbers 1 and 255 because those are special use case numbers. So anything in between 2 and 254 for the last 3 numbers is good. Subnet mask almost always is 255.255.255.0. And you really don't need to worry about the gateway or any of this because it's a very isolated network. You don't need to do that. So we're going to save it. And that is all you do. So that's how you configure the computer. Okay, so let's get into configuring the controller. Now that we have the computer configured so that it can communicate, now we need to configure the controller. So every controller is different, but the process is going to be similar. But not all controllers can be manually configured this way. So you might have to look up in the manual for your controller to find out what the method is. But typically most controllers use buttons and an OLED screen for navigation. And like I mentioned, you need to determine what subnet your home network is using and use a different subnet for your computer's Ethernet and your controller. And like I said, for this case, we're going to use 192.168.2 for our network for this. And our computer was 2. So we're going to take and make the controller .3. So let's configure our controller. Okay, so here's the controller. See, the network's hooked up. This is hooked up to my computer. And you see that it's not flashing because there's no communication going on. The screen is off because it's asleep. Usually just hit one button and it'll come back on. And so we want to select. I'm going to go to network. It's set for DHCP. You see that it has no IP addresses because there's no DHCP server, so nobody gave it an IP address. We're going to select that. We're going to change it to static. Hit enter, and sometimes it'll have a default address in there. You just have to scroll down to that number and select, and then scroll over to the IP address. And the Falcons use leading zeros, but that's not typical. So we're going to change it to 2. We're going to go to 03 like we mentioned. Hit select. And it says to move the left or right arrow to save. We're going to do that. Select yes. Save and reboot. Select. And it's rebooting. And now you see that the status light is flashing because it's actually communicating with the computer now. So that's how you configure the controller. So let's see if we can connect to the controller that we configured. So we're going to do a 192.168.2.3, which is what we configured. And what do we have? There we go. There is our Falcon controller. So that goes over how to connect it directly. But like I said, it's typically easier to connect it through your network. And that's covered in other videos. Okay, let's talk about Wi-Fi tethering. Another very common way to connect a controller directly to your computer is via Wi-Fi tethering. In order for that to work, the Wi-Fi adapter needs to support AP mode. Almost all the Raspberry Pi variants that have a Wi-Fi adapter on them support AP mode. But if you're using a BeagleBone based controller or another controller, you need to make sure that Wi-Fi adapter supports AP mode. For the BeagleBone controllers, it's typical to get a USB Wi-Fi adapter, and they don't all support AP mode. If you're going to get one, I would suggest getting it from either KulpLights or Wired Watts. Those adapters are known to work with AP mode. I have purchased some from Amazon that said they do, and they did not work. So if you want to make sure you get one that works, get it from a source that you know it does. One thing to be aware of is that the range on these could vary from very little to a significant amount. So you got to make sure that you're close enough, at least for testing, to find out what the range is going to be. And you need to have your controller, your FPP device, set up to be if no connection or enabled. And the difference between those is if your FPP device boots up and it does not detect an active network connection via Ethernet or Wi-Fi, then it will go into tethering mode. Or you could have it enabled, which means that it will always go to AP mode, which means that you will not have any other wireless communication except directly through the FPP device. And the enabled mode is typically if you're wanting to make your FPP act as the router for your show. And that's used in like parades and mobile displays, things like that. So let's go over and connect to it and show you how that's done. So down here, if you boot up your FPP device and it is properly configured to go into tether mode, especially like when you first install it. So I have an FPP device that I have a brand new image on it on a Raspberry Pi, so it is going to boot up into tether mode. So you need to click on your network, go to your Wi-Fi, and find the device that's broadcasting FPP. You're going to click on that, and the password is going to be Christmas with a capital C. Because I've connected previously, it has the password in there. So you're going to connect, and you'll probably get information stating that it can't get the internet and stuff. That's fine, because with it connected that way, you cannot. So then let's go over here. So let's pull up a web browser, and in the web browser, you're going to type in 192.168.8.1 and connect. And if you see here, it pulls up FPP, and I'm connected directly wirelessly to it. You see here that it's got that icon over here. That's a direct connection from my computer. Now, I don't have Wi-Fi connection to anything else in my network, just this. So because this is an initial installation, you have to go to this initial setup before you can get to anything else. So you go enable the UI password. You want to keep that disabled. Enabling it does not give you any security, and this is a special use case to enable it. Having this enabled is like putting a lock on your refrigerator in case somebody breaks into your house. It's not going to do you much good. Set the OS password. We're going to keep it the default Falcon, and the player mode, host name, you should probably change it to be something that makes sense. I'm just going to call it test for now. And that's pretty much all you need to do just to get out of this initial setup. And we're not going to go into details on how to do that because there's other videos on how to do the setup. So we're going to finish the setup. Going to tell us to reboot, but we're not going to. We're going to go to the network page. Okay, now we're on the network page. And just to show you about the Wi-Fi here, go to the tethering. This is the if no connection, and this is usually what you want to have it. It's kind of a fail-safe to help you get out of trouble if you have a problem and mess up your network connection. It gives you a way that you could get in and get things going. Okay, so that's it on Wi-Fi tethering. So let's go over what we talked about. The default configuration of using DHCP is much easier. It doesn't require any configuration of the controller or the computer. You just connect them up to your existing network and they are available. But if you need to do a direct connection, connecting a controller directly to your computer requires that you manually configure and manage your computer's Ethernet port and your controller's Ethernet port. And we talked a little bit about Wi-Fi tethering. Wi-Fi tethering is a great option for a direct connect as long as your equipment can support it. So I hope this helps, and if it does, please subscribe and like, and we'll see you at the next one.